I think when I first started, I saw that timber didn't just turn up on a pallet, and I wanted to know much more about it, and I became passionate about the feel of what the timber was. My name's John from Enfield Refurbishments, and we've been trading since 2012. We do carpentry and joinery and refurbishments, mainly in older properties. My first introduction to carpentry was when we used to go round to my nan and granddad's for Sunday lunch. And my granddad was a chippy. He used to tinker about in his workshop making hand tools. In those days when you didn't buy them off the shelf, he used to make them. My granddad would be there in front of his bench, but I always remember that the first thing I could do, I would smell wood. Every time I went in there was something different. My father used to do all of the DIY, used to do everything in construction in his own home, and then in turn used to let me join in, help him out, and I would look up to my dad with all the jobs that he would do, and I'd always want to take part in them. So I suppose my influence was taken also from my father. My dad was my inspiration. My first, obviously, was my granddad. I'd just done my last exam at school. I was 16 years old. Dad had said to me, there's a job in the paper working for a little company making bird tables and rabbit hutches, and I remember applying for it in the paper and getting a phone call that day. I remember being so excited that I'd got that job, and that was my first ever introduction to a job as carpentry and joinery for a living, and that sort of led me on then to do other things within the industry. So I then worked for a fencing company, and we started basically by going into the woods and cutting down the trees, taking them back to the sawmill. I loved the whole process of taking it from the tree to the finished job. I love English oak. That was something that I always wanted to be part of. English oak was always the strongest. Being able to work in that industry was the heart of my passion. When I first started working in oak, one thing I learnt about the different cuts in the timber was that you could change the direction of the saw blade to give you a different grain. And if you look at the different knots and the rays and the parts of the timber that you produce, the best part of any tree will be near the crotch of the tree where the timber splits into two pieces. So you then end up with this beautiful grain that twists and turns. Some people don't like knots. We think they're beautiful. My first apprentice was in 1990, a guy called Nick, and since then I've trained 15 people over the last 30 odd years. Nick being my first and Lisa being my current. Lisa's the first woman I've trained in the industry, and I've trained Lisa now for the last 3 years, and she's done everything from rebuilding a chimney, re-roofing a house, pouring concrete, learning how to do brickwork, carpentry, joinery. There needs to be more women in our trade, and I would always empower a phrase to them, usually within the first 6 months, that would only show them the easy way to do something. I think since we've been using Festool that we found that everything that we use with the equipment set up on site is easier to use. It is the smart way of doing things. Why would you want to cut something twice to try it when you can cut it right first time? The easy way is the Festool way for us because we use those power tools on site every day. They're the smarter way of doing things because you haven't got to do the process a number of times to achieve the same goal.